all the morning, completing the work without the model, but there had been many interruptions, some incident to her modest housekeeping, and others of a social nature. Madame Ratignolle had dragged herself over, avoiding the too public thoroughfares, she said. She complained that Edna had neglected her much of late. Besides, she was consumed with curiosity to see the little house and the manner in which it was conducted. She wanted to hear all about the dinner party. Monsieur Ratignolle had left so early. What had happened after he left? The champagne and grapes which Edna sent over were too delicious. She had so little appetite. They had refreshed and toned her stomach. Where on earth was she going to put Mr. Pontellier in that little house? And the boys? And then she made Edna promise to go to her when her hour of trial overtook her. At any time of the day or night, dear," Edna assured her. Before leaving, Madame Ratignolle said: "In some way you seem to me like a child, Edna. You seem to act without a certain amount of reflection which is necessary in this life. That is the reason I want to say you mustn't mind if I advise you to be a little careful while you are living here alone. Why don't you have someone come and stay with you? Wouldn't Mademoiselle Reisz come?" "No, she wouldn't wish to come, and I shouldn't want her always with me." "Well, the reason you know how evil-minded the world is. Someone was talking of Alcée Arobin visiting you. Of course it wouldn't matter if Mr. Arobin had not such a dreadful reputation. Monsieur Ratignolle was telling me that his attentions alone are considered enough to ruin a woman's name." "Does he boast of his successes?" asked Edna indifferently, squinting at her picture. "No, I think not. I believe he is a decent fellow as far as that goes. But his character is so well known among the men. I shan't be able to come back and see you. It was very, very imprudent today." "Mind the step," cried Edna. "Don't neglect me," entreated Madame Ratignolle. "And don't mind what I said about Arobin, or having someone to stay with you." "Of course not," Edna laughed. "You may say anything you like to me." They kissed each other good-bye. Madame Ratignolle had not far to go, and Edna stood on the porch a while watching her walk down the street. Then in the afternoon Mrs. Merriman and Mrs. Highcamp had made their "party call." Edna felt that they might have dispensed with the formality. They had also come to invite her to play 21 one evening at Mrs. Merriman's. She was asked to go early, to dinner, and Mr. Merriman or Mr. Arobin would take her home. Edna accepted in a half-hearted way. She sometimes felt very tired of Mrs. Highcamp and Mrs. Merriman. Late in the afternoon she sought refuge with Mademoiselle Reisz, and stayed there alone, waiting for her, feeling a kind of repose invade her with the very atmosphere of the shabby, unpretentious little room. Edna sat at the window, which looked out over the housetops and across the river. The window frame was filled with pots of flowers, and she sat and picked the dry leaves from a rose geranium. The day was warm, and the breeze which blew from the river was very pleasant. She removed her hat and laid it on the piano. She went on picking the leaves and digging around the plants with her hat pins. Once she thought she heard Mademoiselle Reisz approaching, but it was a young black girl, who came in bringing a small bundle of laundry, which she deposited in the adjoining room, and went away. Edna seated herself at the piano, and softly picked out with one hand the bars of a piece of music which lay open before her. A half-hour went by. There was the occasional sound of people going and coming in the lower hall. She was growing interested in her occupation of picking out the aria when there was a second rap at the door. She vaguely wondered what these people did when they found Mademoiselle's door locked. "Come in," she called, turning her face toward the door. And this time it was Robert Lebrun who presented himself. She attempted to rise. She could not have done so without betraying the agitation which mastered her at the sight of him, so she fell back upon the stool, only exclaiming: "Why, Robert!" He came and clasped her hand, seemingly without knowing what he was saying or doing. "Mrs. Pontellier, how do you happen... Oh, how well you look! Is Mademoiselle Reisz not here? I never expected to see you." "When did you come back?" asked Edna in an unsteady voice, wiping her face with her handkerchief. She seemed ill at ease on the piano-stool, and he begged her to take the chair by the window. She did so mechanically while he seated himself on the stool. "I returned day before yesterday," he answered, while he leaned his arm on the keys, bringing forth a crash of discordant sound. "Day before yesterday," she repeated aloud, and went on thinking to herself, "Day before yesterday," in a sort of uncomprehending way. She had pictured him seeking her at the very first hour, and he had lived under the same sky since day before yesterday, while only by accident had he stumbled upon her. Mademoiselle must have lied when she said, "Poor fool, he loves you." "Day before yesterday," she repeated, breaking off a spray of Mademoiselle's geranium. Then if you had not met me here today you wouldn't... when... that is, didn't you mean to come and see me?" "Of course I should have gone to see you. There have been so many things." He turned the leaves of Mademoiselle's music nervously. "I started in at once yesterday with the old firm. After all, there is as much chance for me here as there was there. That is, I might find it profitable some day. The Mexicans were not very congenial." So he had come back because the Mexicans were not congenial, because business was as profitable here as there, because of any reason, and not because he cared to be near her. She remembered the day she sat on the floor, turning the pages of his letter, seeking the reason which was left untold. She had not noticed how he looked, only feeling his presence, but she turned deliberately and observed him. After all, he had been absent but a few months, and was not changed. His hair, the colour of hers, waved back from his temples in the same way as before. His skin was not more burned than it had been at Grand-Isle. She found in his eyes, when he looked at her for one silent moment, the same tender caress, with an added warmth and entreaty which had not been there before the same glance which had penetrated to the sleeping places of her soul and awakened them. 100 times Edna had pictured Robert's return, and imagined their first meeting. It was usually at her home, whither he had sought her out at once. She always fancied him expressing or betraying in some way his love for her. And here the reality was that they sat 10 feet apart, she at the window, crushing geranium leaves in her hand and smelling them, he twirling around on the piano stool, saying: "I was very much surprised to hear of Mr. Pontellier's absence. It's a wonder Mademoiselle Reisz did not tell me. And you're moving. Mother told me yesterday. I should think you would have gone to New York with him, or to Iberville with the children, rather than be bothered here with housekeeping. And you are going abroad too, I hear. We shan't have you at Grand-Isle next summer. It won't seem... Do you see much of Mademoiselle Reisz? She often spoke of you in the few letters she wrote." "Do you remember that you promised to write to me when you went away?" A flush overspread his whole face. "I couldn't believe that my letters would be of any interest to you." "That is an excuse. It isn't the truth." Edna reached for her hat on the piano. She adjusted it, sticking the hat pin through the heavy coil of hair with some deliberation. "Are you not going to wait for Mademoiselle Reisz?" asked Robert. "No. I have found when she is absent this long she is liable not to come back till late." She drew on her gloves, and Robert picked up his hat. "Won't you wait for her?" asked Edna. "Not if you think she will not be back till late," adding, as if suddenly aware of some discourtesy in his speech, "and I should miss the pleasure of walking home with you." Edna locked the door and put the key back in its hiding place. They went together, picking their way across muddy streets and sidewalks encumbered with the cheap display of small tradesmen. Part of the distance they rode in the car, and after disembarking, passed the Pontellier mansion, which looked broken and half torn asunder. Robert had never known the house, and looked at it with interest. "I never knew you in your home," he remarked. "I am glad you did not." "Why?" She did not answer. They went on round the corner, and it seemed as if her dreams were coming true after all when he followed her into the little house. "You must stay and dine with me, Robert. You see I am all alone, and it is so long since I have seen you. There is so much that I want to ask you." She took off her hat and gloves. He stood irresolute, making some excuse about his mother who expected him. He even muttered something about an engagement. She struck a match and lit the lamp on the table. It was growing dusk. When he saw her face in the lamplight, looking pained, with all the soft lines gone out of it, he threw his hat aside and seated himself. "Oh, you know I want to stay if you will let me," he exclaimed. All the softness came back. She laughed, and went and put her hand on his shoulder. "This is the first moment you have seemed like the old Robert. I'll go tell Celestine." She hurried away to tell Celestine to set an extra place. She even sent her off in search of some added delicacy which she had not thought of for herself. And she recommended great care in dripping the coffee and having the omelette done to a proper turn. When she re-entered, Robert was turning over magazines, sketches and things that lay upon the table in great disorder. He picked up a photograph and exclaimed: "Alcée Arobin? What on earth is his picture doing here?" "I tried to make a sketch of his head one day," answered Edna, "and he thought the photograph might help me. It was at the other house. I thought it had been left there. I must have packed it up with my drawing materials." "I should think you would have given it back to him if you have finished with it." "Oh, I have a great many such photographs. I never think of returning them. They don't amount to anything." Robert kept on looking at the picture. "It seems to me... Do you think his head worth drawing? Is he a friend of Mr. Pontellier's? You never said you knew him." "He isn't a friend of Mr. Pontellier's. He's a friend of mine.